Here's Matt Christman back before the 2020 election, and he's talking about, you know, voting for Democrats and being radical, being left, and why that leads you astray.
But this is actually a good segue to something I wanted to talk about, referencing something I had said later, or earlier, and that is that we're talking about Chomsky, and we're talking about anarchism, libertarian socialism, and I said that Chomsky is a liberal, and people got justifiably defensive about that. People who respect Chomsky's views, people who find liberal to be an epithet and not a descriptor, people who, you know, feel a lot of value in the anarchist tradition, which is totally understandable. And now, you know, I thought about it a little more, and I realized that I misspoke. That I think the basic principle I was arguing is correct, but I did not elaborate clearly enough on why. So my basic argument there was, so some leftists like Mehdi Hassan and are dragging out, as Democrats do every 4 years, the increasingly aged Noam Chomsky. They wind him up like a fucking Teddy Ruxpin, and they ask him, should you vote for the Democrat? And he says yes. And then people like Mehdi Hassan say, see, Chomsky says vote for Biden. You're not to the left of Chomsky, so that means the left position is to vote for Biden. And now, Mehdi Hassan, I think, probably has bad faith in that. But I don't think that Chomsky has bad faith. I think a lot of, like, you see people talk about how when this comes up, they'll say, oh, you know, he was at MIT all those years and defense contracts. And, I mean, the bulk of his work and the bulk of his work on life belies that being real. I mean, he clearly says what he believes. He has paid the price for saying what he believes his whole life. And
well, I want to just pause it here and just say that Noam Chomsky's own analysis applies to him as well. Mike, I think it's really impossible to say, oh, wow, Olivia, etc. What changed when you and I both know they're doing that so Chuck steps down for another Hakeem clone? The corporatist class is willing to throw him under the bus to put it in another fresh face. Why the fuck aren't you warning people about this? Oh, my God, let's bring in Andy or Tim to take over the party. It's a siphon. Okay, I want to just let you know that your point is well made. I think my audience is fully inculcated against falling for that, right? Like, I feel like I've taught you guys how to be smart, which is why you're overreacting and yelling at me. That being said, you're looking at it the wrong way. You're looking at it like a doomer loser, which, you know, I understand. I get it. You know, times are tough. The Democrats will betray you. You know, you're right about all that. But what you should be doing is you should be looking at that and using it as energy and fuel for your side. Which is, even these dumb fucks agree that Chuck Schumer has to go. Right? You're not elevating them. You call them dumb fucks. Even the dumbest pieces of shit, like Liviana, they agree Chuck Schumer needs to go. It's a sign showing that there's a broad consensus, and you make sure you throw in an insult and you throw in some well poisoning when you talk about them, right? You just be like, this person is the dumbest piece of shit I've ever seen, and even they agree with all the smart people. Everybody, the dumbest Democrats to the smartest Democrats, all agree with us. Chuck Schumer should go. Right? You don't go like, oh, Olivia, tell me who you think should replace Chuck. No, I get what you're saying. And of course, that's the danger. Right? Of course, that's the danger. But that's why our people being pushed is the sign. And that's why a few days ago, I defended AOC. Why did I defend AOC a few days ago on that letter? Why did I have a crash out a few days ago? Do you guys remember me crashing out over people attacking AOC and going like, that's so fucking stupid, and I'd fighting with people I normally agree with? Why did I do that? Because it was wrong. Because she was on the right side of the issue. And I think it's stupid to just throw AOC or, you know, squad members into the dumpster without a plan. AOC did a lot of dumbass shit during the election, and she's taken a lot of heat for that, and I criticized her for that. But At the same time, we need to have a nexus of organization. That's why I never abandoned Bernie either. When he was taking forever to go after Israel, I continue to apply pressure because it seems like the pressure is working. I am not a purity guy. I am a ultimate pragmatist. Do you know who I look at in history for my advice? Lenin, Mao, Xi Jinping. These are the people that inspire me. All right. I am not a purity guy. I'm a winner guy. I like parties that win, revolutions that win. I don't give a shit about pure thought. And so, yeah, if I could use AOC, then I'll use AOC. I won't throw the baby out with the bathwater. But I also understand something that's very important, which is she is necessary but not sufficient. She is there to heighten the contradictions of capitalism, even in a way she doesn't even understand. The reformists will prove the ineffectiveness of reform. Or we'll get a lot of really nice concessions. Worst case scenario, we get ourselves a Green New Deal. Best case scenario, we have communist world revolution. And revolutions happen in situations of frustrated reform, not fascist oppression. So it's our job to make the conditions of frustrated reform. 3 weeks after J.D. Vance validly castigated Europe for its growing censorship, the U.S. government just told Columbia that it's put its Middle East Studies Department into receivership for 5 years and provide a detailed plan to the U.S. government on how it will do so, a.k.a. J.D. Vance did not validly argue anything. He's a liar. This is literally fascism. How does anyone rationally explain the hypocrisy? Many conservatives have and long have had a giant glaring exception to their ostensible principles called Israel, all in devotion to this one foreign country, rendering unnecessary any attempt to reconcile any of this. I don't think it's devotion to Israel or the fact that we don't want people who hate us in our country. They don't like the West. Don't come here. Israel and the U.S. are separate country. Denouncing Israel's actions does not mean you hate us in our country. Israel is a foreign country, not a U.S. state. Protesting U.S. policy also doesn't mean you hate the country, as conservatives should know better than anyone. You dumb, fucking, worthless sacks of shit. Glenn Greenwald is right. Columbia used to have a whole thing on their website about how ashamed they were about what they did to the 1968 protesters. And here they are doing it again.
The way I know that he bears Bryce is because he answers every email he receives, which means he is clearly, at some level, seeking truth. No one would do that if they weren't. So I believe Chomsky when he says that his reason gets him to voting for Biden. This is where liberalism comes in. Because I think, and you can listen to me and tell me if I'm wrong or not, I think that that Chomsky's liberalism is why I think he's wrong, first of all, about voting for Biden. And I think his liberalism, not just to say he's wrong in isolation, but you've only ever explained something if you've explained why. A lot of shit that happens on the internet is people describing a condition and then calling that an argument. You haven't made an argument until you've added the why. So I will make the proposition that, first of all, we'll take the as assumed proposition among us that, yeah, you don't have to vote for Biden. That's silly. You don't agree with him. Now let's figure out why we disagree with him on this. And this is, once again, how I have reasoned it out. You can tell me how you think I'm wrong if you do. And the reason I made that people said Noam Chomsky's a liberal and that came up is because they had an intuitive understanding that that was tied to his wrongness in this case. And a lot of people took that the wrong way. And they're like, oh, do you mean it like he's too stupid, or he doesn't get it, or he's too... Because when you say someone's a liberal, you mean there's some combination of stupid and greedy. There's some combination of too dumb to get the point or materially positioned where they don't want socialism. So they're either dumb or greedy if they're liberal. Like, that's what liberal is. It's some combination of those two things. And the thing is, we all are to some
True.
extent. And how much we are depends on our fixed position in space-time and the life we've lived. So
correct. God, this is why I miss Matt so much. He puts it so concisely, which is, that's exactly right. That's exactly right. And I use liberal as an insult, but I also use it as a descriptor. I don't just throw it out there when it doesn't apply. And all of us are liberals to a certain extent, right? And I think that it is hubris to say that you're not. It is lack of self-knowledge. But that being said, I know my heart, and I know what goes on in here, and I know what gets filtered between what goes on in here and what comes out here. And my filter, if I could get 1 day of free speech, just 1 day of absolute free speech, just a single day where I was allowed to do free speech without immediate state repression. God, that's my fantasy. Actual free speech. Harvard Law School passes referendum to divest from Israel with 73% of the vote. This is the most decisive statement in support of Palestine in the law school's history. Oh my God. This is incredible. Let's fucking go. Harvard students. That's great.
When I say that Chomsky is a liberal, guess what? Karl Marx was also a liberal to different extents. Now, to the extent that Chomsky is a liberal is the extent that he has explicitly said that his vision of the world, his vision of politics, his vision of practice, all comes from Enlightenment thinking. He has said that a million times. He even points to a specific...
Marxism is a continuation. I mean, like, this is not... Okay, I don't think it's this simple, but Marxist thought is Western thought. Marx was a German. Okay? Like, it comes out of that milieu. Like, it is not, like, it's very funny when people try to pretend Marxism is some sort of, like, foreign ideology to the West. No, it comes from the West. And Matt Christman argues very persuasively, in my opinion, that socialism and Marxism come from a kind of, how would I put this? It's like a distillation of the logic of Christianity, which is the equality and value of souls and like human beings, and like the righteousness of equality, the righteousness of and value of every human soul. Which is there are plenty of belief systems that do not believe that. There are a lot of belief systems that have categories of human beings that are just permanently separated from and lesser. They mean Jewish? No, it's not. It's not Jewish. Not a Jewish thought. We're not going to get into that. Dialectical materialism is basically just evolutionary theory applied to society, and it is definitely part of that intellectual milieu, no doubt. Marxism is an inward critique of Western chauvinism and how that halts enlightenment. I also think that's strong point as well. I want to get into Marxist theory. I have read almost nothing. Where should I start? Professor Harvey has done a like read along for Capital. There's a book also called Socialism, a Manifesto for if you're extremely baby brained, by a friend of mine, Bhaskar Sankara. If you want the easiest, most baby brained introduction, like intro 101, I'm just barely getting into it, and you want to read a book, it's called Socialism, the Manifesto by Bhaskar Sankara. This is baby level shit. It's great for that. So if you're already more advanced than that, you know, I'd say read it just to understand what Bhaskar thinks. But I think it's a very good spot. And we have all sorts of resources in the Discord as well. I like the Socialist Manifesto personally, but it might be a little bit dated as well, but that is what it is.
Relatively obscure German humanist as like his foundational influence. I'm gonna find the guy's name. I keep forgetting it. Chomsky, Enlightenment, some Kraut influence. One of my people, one square-headed motherfucker. God damn it! Now I feel like I'm losing you guys because I can't find the name of this dude. It's some dumb name. Anyway, I will find it at some point. In the meantime, what matters is that he fixes himself in the liberal tradition of personhood. So when he says, I want to do X, Y, and Z because of the liberal tradition, what he means is he believes in socialism as a moral proposition flowing from the inviolability of the individual. That's where the liberalism comes in. He believes that the individual is an unmoved place of meaning, an essence, that a soul exists. It's not necessarily spiritual, but there is a individual human consciousness that is unmoved and that moves upon others. That's the liberal conception of the self. It arose as the economy in Western Europe became more complicated, became more abstracted, and required a greater degree of abstracted thinking in order to process it. And that created a more abstract notion of the self than the more immediate notion of the Renaissance era, or certainly the medieval era, where everyone believes in God. So that version of the self that emerges to compensate for this new, more complicated, this new, more complex economic arrangement and social system that you're in, makes you into that liberal subject. So he carries that with him, and he said that. And so that means that he's approaching, so that's why he is a liberal when he approaches the question of should you vote for Biden. Now, Marx also as a liberal subject because he was born in the early 1800s in southwestern Germany, a region that was one of the areas near the Ruhr Valley that was one of the original hotbeds of industrial capitalism. Now, industrial capitalism was still in its infancy, but he saw it, and his life took place in tandem with the arriving of industrial capitalism. Witnessing that in his life and witnessing its impression on the world around him made him think differently. And it made him take the dialectical processes that he noticed lead through economic development. Like what powered us from slave states to feudalism to capitalism, it was a dialectical conflict of forces within the society. Slave, freeman, serf, master, serf,
aristocrat,
worker,
capitalist,
owner. That is how society comes into recognition of itself as a society, is through conflict within it. He applied that, as Hegel did, to the self. Now, they say that they do it on different sides, but it comes back to the same thing. The self is a series of resolved contradictions. It is not an individual monad that moves of its own volition. It is always being made by what's around it. And that,
by the way, we know this as a fact. This is not just like I can't say words. Philosophizing. There we go. We got it. It's not just philosophizing bullshit. It is, we know this for a fact. You are not one consciousness. You are not one person. You are a unity. You contain multitudes. There are many wolves inside you. I think people have a very hard time with this, but this has been like pretty much experimentally confirmed through a variety of ways. One of them is people who have had their corpus callosum severed, which is a structure in your brain that connects different hemispheres. And they can oftentimes they'll have like one section of your brain is responsible for certain parts of your body, like, you know, explaining things and speaking. And another could be in charge of like physical movement. And they could be working cross purposes. Basically, they could disagree. And so it is the human consciousness is not as simple as we commonly talk about it. Senator Raphael Warnock asked about the performance of Minority Leader Chuck Schumer. I think come 26, 28, we'll get some new leadership. Why wait? Remove Chuck Schumer now. This is like the biggest problem that we have on the left. This is the biggest problem we have. It is basically relaxation bias or passivity. Executive dysfunction. It is, wow, things look pretty good, but maybe if we wait a little bit longer, things are going to get better for us. The answer is, if it seems like a good time now, act. There is a saying. I believe it's from General Eisenhower. I learned this when I was in the military, or I should say I was forced to learn it. General Eisenhower has a saying. I believe it was Eisenhower, or maybe it was Patton. I don't remember. The important thing is the idea. It says, a good plan executed now is better than a perfect plan executed next week. That is the single most, that's the reason why I'm streaming. The reason why I have a successful stream is 6 years ago. I wasn't an affiliate. I wasn't ready. And I just said, fuck it. I'm going live. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is why you're here. Is because a long, long, long time ago, I had a shitty laptop with a iPhone earbuds and an integrated webcam. The laptop was, 4 or 5 years old, and I said, fuck it. I'm going live. It was Patton, thank you. So why are we waiting? You're waiting around for perfect? Perfect will never come. Good enough is what you need. And if you have time, you can go back and revise, and you can go back and sand, and you can go back and finish. But for the love of God, launch the ship. A good plan violently executed right away beats a perfect plan tomorrow. Yeah, I think that sounds more Patton-like. I may have sanded the edges of that. I'll never forget you thirsting over big booty mute Dottie with Will Neff. It's how I found it. Yeah, that was called comedy. That was a great stream. I don't have that stream, and it really pisses me off. I wish I had saved it. The self, as the West understands it, is trapped in the reality that we will forever chase perfected rationality, aka closeness to God. We have to have an externalized procedure in opposition to self to exist. Oh, I mean.
And the flat earth takes.
I mean, like, look at this shit. I was teaching people about why minimum wage should go to $15 an hour. Short-haired Mike.
Means that when we examine a political question, we have to examine it in time and space. So that is why
same
Chomsky
daily sub goal. Hell yeah, brother. Although that was probably not my daily sub goal. That was probably like my sub goal period. Like if I could get to 100 subscribers, I'd be so happy. I just like the number 100. What can I say?
looks at the question of vote for Biden two-dimensionally. Here's the Democratic Party, here's the Republican Party. The Democratic Party is less evil. It's less bad. Its platform is not as bad. The people who make it up are better people in the sense that they have more agreed upon stated values that accord with what we think is the good. So, shit, what was I saying? So anyway, so that's the Democrats are on that axis better than Republicans, and so Chomsky says, I want what's best for everybody. The Democrats want more of what's best for people than the Republicans do, therefore I have to vote for Democrats. And the thing is, that's correct. He reasoned that out right. He's right, but only on that mere level. He has not interposed the context on top of it. And the context that Chomsky misses, because he's not applying dialectical reasoning to the question, is the role that the Democratic Party plays in making the Republican Party worse over time. This
is what I tried to explain to Sam Cedar of why I wouldn't vote for Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris represents the Joe Biden wing of the Democratic Party, which is a party that's so incompetent and so evil that it makes the Republican Party worse over time because they do not operate as a party which is trying to win.
Each other. The degree to which the presently construed Democratic Party is allowed to maintain its structure, the people in charge of it, and its material base, as in who contributes money to maintaining it, that will continue to, as it has, drive the Republicans bad, to the right, even more reactionary. So their rule is even worse. And that means that when they take power, they only intensify a process that's going to happen either way. Like, take, for example, if Biden is president during a world-defining economic collapse following, because, like, okay, say we get the virus under control, when we let back up, there is no return to normal. There's a huge demand gap that will have to be filled, and filling it will be a bigger challenge than the Great Depression. If the Democrats are in charge of that process, the way the Republicans were during the early days of the Depression, they will be the party associated with austerity because they will be doing the bidding of actual capital. And in a situation like that, austerity is demanded. So they will be that reactionary party, which means that the Republicans, they're not going to get less racist. They're going to get maybe a little less racist. They're going to get more redistributive, and maybe it'll be enough to get them into power. At which point you have
they got more racist.
A few mild social democratic trappings to a system that is mostly dedicated to like an ethno-state. You flipped it over. You could have had the other thing. So whatever that is, that dimension is absent from Chomsky's analysis of the situation, and so it's wrong. And the reason he gets it wrong is because he comes from a liberal conception of the self. He thinks that the Democratic Party and the Republican Party are distinct things that move of their own volition based on what the people within them want. That's not the case.
This is the point that, and also I would say Sam Cedar has the same exact view. This is why I have such harsh disagreements, even though I love Sam on this point. Is Sam Cedar thinks the Democratic Party operates on its own volition and it's an independent thing and they're just better than the Republicans and we have to do lesser evilism all the time and we should never demand anything and we should never hold them to account and we should just vote for the Democrat every November every time, and you're irresponsible and unreasonable if you say the Democrats are unacceptable, right? And the reason why he does that is because he has trauma from 2000. The 2000 election, he blames the Green Party voters of Florida for George W. Bush. And the reality is, the Green Party of Florida is not responsible for George W. Bush. The Democratic Party is, because they refused to stop the steal. The 2000 election was stolen from the Democrats and they refused to fight. They let them steal it. Because of the Democrats, maintaining legitimacy of the institutions in the eyes of the American people was more important than the actual democratic will of the people. And they've continued to do that over and over and over again. Every election, they've gotten worse on that issue. The democratic will of the people has been more ignored in favor of their dogged defense of the Republican-led institutions. And they've continued that to the point where they're now passing Trump's continuing resolution in front of your eyes. As Donald Trump is unconstitutionally dismantling the federal government, they're still doing it. There's nothing that will make them stop. Nothing will make the Democrats stop. They're rounding up American permanent residents for their speech and calling them terrorist supporters. There is nothing. What if they arrested, what if they started arresting American protesters tomorrow? You think it's going to make a fucking difference? You think the Democrats are suddenly going to go, oh yeah, now is the time to fight? There's literally nothing that is gonna make them stop.
They're brought into being in conflict with one another, always, at the personal and system and intellectual level. So that is why Chomsky is wrong. And it comes from him being a liberal.
Just an hour ago, you said you're gonna stop screaming? Oh, well.
I said, Marx was also, here's the kicker. Marx also, growing up in the early 1800s, had a liberal conception of the self that he interposed on top of dialectical materialism. So he accepts personhood to the level that Chomsky does of all humans are worthy of respect, that the golden rule applies to all recognizable humans, depending on how we define that. But then he puts dialectical materialism on top of it. Chomsky doesn't. And so that can run off in all kinds of wrong directions when it comes in contact with a place that has evolved beyond the conditions that produced to the original insight. All right, that made sense. I felt better about that one. I gotta say, like, this is why the key to all of, like, thought and right action and all those notions that I never really understood from Buddhism and Christianity and Islam and from socialism is practice, the need to do them every moment. And so, like, I felt kind of crippled by how people were going to think I was crazy when I started explaining things a few of the episodes ago. Now, by repetition and keep doing it, and from hearing back from people who've heard me, I have more confidence that fear is gone. So I'm able more to concentrate on getting across the ideas, and I'm better able to get the ideas across. I am able to concentrate more perfectly because I'm less worried.
Sam's take is do not try to change the Dem Party. Sam Cedar's take is at least there's a chance to change the Dem Party while not under fascism. Wrong. His theory is just wrong. The left in America has always done better while resisting the Republicans than they have under the Democrats. He's just wrong. We got Barack Obama because we had George W. Bush. We got Bernie Sanders because it was a reaction to who? The left grew more after 2016 because there was Donald Trump. This is just wrong. And right now you can see it happening. The center is being discredited. Now, the problem that we have is that the Republican Party has gone so far right. Why has the Republican Party been able to go so far right? Because Joe Biden and the centrist Democrats have never offered any kind of constitutional or other hardball against the Republicans. The Democrats had the opportunity to ban gerrymandering, and they did not do it. The Democrats had the opportunity to protect voting rights. The Democrats had the opportunity to restrict super PACs. The Democrats had the opportunity to expand the Supreme Court. The Democrats had the opportunity to pass bills on equality, on abortion rights, on minimum wage. They did not do it. They just don't have a program that actually people can see in their life and then support. And you can see the alternative in Mexico. In Mexico, after 6 years in power, the left-wing party has an 85% approval rating. Why does that happen? Because regular Mexicans can see, I got this. This was built. I'm taken care of. I'm listened to. Here's my life. Oh, my kids are getting glasses in school for free. Oh, there's 1 million homes that are going to be built for Mexicans. That's a new program that Claudia just announced. Oh, we're going to build these high-speed railroads. Oh, we're going to build this. Oh, I have this. Oh, I can see this. Oh, I can point to that. Claudia did that. AMLO did that. They're going to do that. They're standing up against Trump. They're doing this. They're doing that. They can point to it. They can see it. And they're also engaged. She listens to them. She respects them. Regular people feel like they're being listened to. So she's got unbelievable popularity, even with people to her right, because they respect she is accomplishing things. They can see it in their own eyes because guess what, chat? Very few people are actually ideological, right? Very few people are ideological. I am. And if you are, which I doubt, but the odds are higher because you're here. If you are actually ideological, like me, you're a freak. I don't see how we get to a big leftist party that can win and pull back anything through this fascism in any near term, because you have never studied history. Is my blunt and honest opinion of you. Do you think that people saw FDR coming in 1926? Do you think they saw FDR coming in 1928? You don't know what you're talking about. And that's just simply the truth. Do you think they saw the Russian Revolution in 1914? You just don't know what you're talking about. The reality is that you think you could see into the future 5 years and say what the outcomes are going to be, but that's never how it's worked. Do you think they saw the Republican Party in 1850? Like, this is the reality, is you just don't know your history at a basic elementary level. So you have this kind of blinkered political worldview because why? Somebody else told you it can't happen? Are there angels with swords of fire at the necks of every leftist that are going to keep them from ever taking power? Like, what? You believe in magical thinking to constrain yourself into liberalism, and it's embarrassing. Grow up. Stand up for what you believe in instead of what somebody else told you was possible, because they're bullshitting you to manipulate you. Now, I have to come to either one of two conclusions. One, you're trying to manipulate us with your bullshit, right? You don't support the program that I support, and you're just lying in order to convince people who do agree with me that they can't get it done, in which case, fuck you. Or two, you're a rube who got tricked. And you're like a virulent, you're like a vector of stupidity running around spreading it. So are you a typhoid Mary of dumbass political takes, or are you a bad faith liar? Which one? I read history, and you know what I learn from history? Optimism. Because there are so many times in history when people didn't see a way out. And not only 10 years later did they win, they had achieved things that people 10 years ago thought would take 150 years to achieve. And this is in all aspects of humanity. I'm talking about women's rights. I'm talking about technology. The difference in plain technology between 1914 and 1950 is unbelievable. The difference in computer technology for when I was a child to now is unbelievable. The change that has happened in gay rights in my lifetime is unbelievable. Things change, and they change rapidly. What's happened in China? 800 million people have been brought out of poverty in my lifetime. You're just don't know what can happen. You just are constraining yourself because somebody told you to, and you don't have a reason, and it's embarrassing.
Literally everyone but them, but all of the Democrats protesting during the State of the Union by wearing a pink situation and holding up their little signs is the exact same energy, but 100 times worse, as all of those celebrities singing Imagine during COVID, living in their mansions and shit. That is what that's giving. It's the same exact energy as reading in your history book that, oh, the politicians who were against Hitler, well, they decided to try to stop him by showing up to his speech and all wearing purple hats. Do you hear how stupid that sounds? Protest is not for you. Protest is for the people. We have to engage in acts of protest and speech and symbolism and rebellion in order to have our voices heard. If we are protesting what the government is doing, you are the government. You are the government, the ones we voted in to do what we need and to protect our democracy and values and rights. You are the person we're talking to. You protesting in there is just talking at each other. You're talking at the problem and then still sitting for it and acknowledging that it has power and just shrugging and wearing a pink fucking jacket. That shit pisses me off beyond reason. And them saying, well, we don't have any power to do, we can't, well, what are we supposed to? Trump and Elon, 90% of the things that they have done, they also do not legally have the power to do, but they've been doing it anyway. Following the rule book, holding tight to those rules and whatever, isn't this moral high ground that you're taking. You're not better for it. You're actually worse. Because the rule book in and of itself, our Constitution and our rule of law and our system of governments, in and of itself hinges upon the fact that none of y'all would have let this shit happen. If this shit is happening, of course our principles of democracy are not going to work properly because no one on their side is going to follow the rules. So you just holding onto the rule book and saying, well, we're getting dunked on the House, but I'm going to wear a pink shirt. That's fucking useless. Actively disrupting a fascist regime requires that you play outside of the rules. Y'all need to start doing that because all of you just honoring this system of governance that is not happening anymore, that doesn't exist anymore because you're thinking that, oh, well, democracy will just like get itself out of it. That's not what's going to happen. Rules of law and the Constitution do not account for you allowing a hostile takeover. Bar for bar, honest to God, if you look it up from the 1930s, how Hitler took over the government, sitting in that room and pretending that this all still works is absolutely dignifying something that has lost all legitimacy. Sitting there and following the fucking rules and voting for shit that you're gonna fucking lose on, even though it's taking away the rights and dignities and money and everything, economic policy, everything. Our country is going to shut the fuck down. In 1 year, I don't think people realize how bad it's going to get. Okay? Trump threatening to fire all of the lawyers and judges who disagree with him, saying they're going to be investigated. The American Bar Association having to release a statement saying, fuck, like we are holding the line. We are bipartisan, but what the fuck? Like, this is really bad. You cannot, this is what we do. Trump saying, oh, the judicial branch is not allowed. Lawyers and judges are not allowed to tell the executive branch what the laws mean, when that's literally to a T what our jobs are. That's the job description of what the judicial branch is. Acknowledging that the institution itself is broken requires acting outside of it now.
And this is actually very basic political science. These institutions do not exist as self-justifying institutions. Institutions only exist as objects of social consensus. Laws only exist as objects of social consensus. Laws only, I'll give you an example of what I'm talking about. When you're driving on the highway, how fast do you go? Do you go the speed limit or do you go 10 miles over? The law says you're supposed to go the speed limit, but everybody goes 10 miles over. Why? Because it has become the social consensus that going 10 miles over the speed limit is okay. And so we all do it. So we all flout the law. because that's what we all socially are conditioned to do. So there's a different law, which is you're actually an asshole if you drive the speed limit. People will actually get mad at you if you drive the speed limit. And so, but if you got pulled over and you were going 10 over, the cop could write you a ticket. And would you think that was a fair ticket, or would you be pissed off? You'd be like, come on, man, I'm going 10 over. This is what everybody does. This is bullshit. This is arbitrary. This is unfair. But actually, it wouldn't be. But because social consensus is so ingrained that you can go 10 miles over, you get to go 10 miles over. And this is true of every law. You actually don't follow laws. You operate intuitively. This is actually reality. You don't know what the fucking laws are. Lawyers don't know what the fucking laws are. You operate according to the norms and expectations of behavior that you have been inculcated with, and you assume the law lines up with it. That is how people actually behave. Well, guess what? That's not the case. The Republicans are saying we're going to change the norms and we're going to use the law to do so. And we're going to use force with the law as justification. Do you understand that? The Republicans are saying we control the state, and so we're going to change the norms and we're going to use force justifying itself with the law. And so they are now going to use the institutions to enforce a change in our society. So either you accept that these institutions have been irrevocably broken and do not represent the democratic will of the people, or you accept the use of force without protest. That is how law operates in society. I'll give you an example from my lifetime. Laws against littering and laws against indoor smoking. When I was young, people would smoke indoors. They would smoke at the library. They would smoke at the bar. They would smoke at your restaurant. They would smoke in the airplane. People were smoking constantly. It was normal. It was expected. There were ashtrays in the backs of plane seats. There were ashtrays. Every car had a fucking lighter involved. And guess what? We as a society looked at the evidence that secondhand smoke was damaging people's health, and we passed a law, and that gave us the justification to start using force against people who were smoking next to us indoors. And we made it a small, relatively small fine, right? It's not the end of the world. We didn't put a gun to your head. But it was basically, we have the ability to take money out of your bank account if you smoke indoors. And that gave other people the right to start shaming you. Hey, you're not allowed to smoke in here. That's against the law. That's against the rules. No smoking. Get out. And what had been the expected norm changed because of the use of law. And now, if I were to go into a fucking hospital and start smoking, every single person, smoker or no, would tell me I'm a fucking lunatic and throw me out. But when I was growing up, their doctor used to come into your fucking room with a lit cigarette. Like, so these are the changes that I have literally seen. Really? Like, let me see what it's like. Firing line from the 60s. Let me see if I can find like
Shakespeare.
people like smoking. Do you think do people smoke at the fire? Did anybody like? I'm sure there's episodes where people were smoking in the firing line. Maybe not, but maybe he had. Maybe he was a non-smoker. I don't know. But people used to like literally smoke on television. Johnny Carson smoking. Let me see if I can find that. Johnny Carson smoking on air.
George Burns is a phenomenon. At the age of 93.
There you go. See, this is 1989. This guy's got a lit fucking cigar and he's going to town. Again, I remember those days. I remember it. When men were men. No, I'm kidding. Like, this is how shit changes. I bring this up just because I'm trying to explain it something so that even liberals can't disagree with me. You know what I mean? Like, either you stand up and you start fighting back with everything you've got, or you accept the new world order of God knows how bad it's gonna get.
But no one is willing to do that. And it's honestly embarrassing and disgusting. Wearing a different color shirt and holding up a little sign, enough.
You know, if you were to follow a busy doctor as he makes his daily round of calls, you'd find yourself having a mighty busy time keeping up with him. Time out for many men of medicine usually means just long enough to enjoy a cigarette. And because they know what a pleasure it is to smoke a mild, good-tasting cigarette, they're particular about the brand they choose. In a repeated national survey, doctors in all branches of medicine, doctors in all parts of the country were asked, "What cigarette do you smoke, doctor?" Once again, the brand named most was Camel. Yes, according to this...
Yeah, you can see he's literally using the car lighter. I mean, honestly, when I got my first car, it had a car lighter in it. Like, this is something that even you younger people have noticed. Car lighters have only, like, kind of recently stopped being in cars.
Yes, according to this repeated nationwide survey, more doctors smoke Camels than any other cigarette. Why not change to Camels for the next 30 days and see what a difference it makes in your smoking enjoyment? See how Camels agree with your throat. See how mild and good-tasting a cigarette can be.
Ashing inside your car is so gross, dude. All right, what else were we talking about? Yeah, okay, I got off on a rant, chat, and I haven't been... See, like, this is one of the things that's so funny about my stream. People will come into my stream and be like, Mike just reacts to stuff. I just did, what, 2 hours of... And I had, like, maybe 10 minutes of video, 15 minutes of video there. How much was that even me talking about reacting to videos or me just pulling up videos to make a point? It's crazy how people like. I think I probably. I mean, it's just fucking insane. I don't know what else to even say. Citizenship is only for those who lick the boot now. U.S. Secretary of State Rubio, expect more student visas to be revoked in the coming days. This is literally against the spirit of the First Amendment. Which is basically, this is what conservatives do. You know, they want to make it, oh yeah, freedom of speech, but if you disagree with us, then you're undesirable. So, like, if I, as an American, said, Israel is an apartheid state, they can't do anything to me because of the First Amendment. But if you, as a permanent resident, agree with me, now you can be deported? Does that sound like a world of free speech to you? I guess that creates a whole bunch of statements that people are going to be deported for. What about abortion should be a right? Is that something that could be deported for? What about gay marriage is legitimate? What about trans rights are human rights? What about trans women are women? What about we should raise the minimum wage? What about you should join a union? I mean, are those illegal? Are those undesirable? Are those something that violates the First? Because if the First Amendment doesn't apply, anybody who's not a citizen can't say anything that might piss off a Republican? That's the world you want to live in, you fucking dumb piece of shit, Asmongold? And before you try to justify, oh, they were supporting terrorists. Terrorism is a designation that has been given to some of the history's greatest liberators, like, for example, Nelson Mandela. It is a meaningless designation. It is a political designation. So what you're basically saying is, I want the United States government to be able to censor speech. I'm not saying if somebody sends money or builds a bomb, that's material support of terrorism. But if somebody says, I think that the Palestinian resistance is legitimate under international law, which it is, by the way, and which has never been denied, that doesn't make you a terrorist. Speech does not make you a terrorist. Why are you just accepting they won't strip birthright citizenship from critics of Israel? I don't assume that. I don't assume that. This is the first step on that ladder. They're testing to see what they can get away with. And Asmongold is saying, I want people to be censored who say things I disagree with. I mean, he is somebody who came out and said he doesn't care if somebody is genocided, and he thinks that words are terrorism. That's an interesting belief to have when you just said that, dumbass. And I can say, chat, you know, listen, I am a leftist, so I already understand the game. You know, I understand the game. People like Asmongold don't believe in the First Amendment. Okay, they don't believe in freedom of speech. People like Asmongold use freedom of speech so they can get away with shit when they're not in power. And the moment they're in power, now suddenly freedom of speech doesn't mean what it said when they were out of power. What a disgusting rat.